Hi, welcome everybody to the CEU Executive MBA Vienna Open Day. My name is Thomas Lamel. I'm the Senior Program Manager of CEU Executive MBA, and I will guide you through the evening. We will start with the program presentation by Faculty Co-Director, Professor Yusaf Akbar. Thereafter, you will have the chance to meet current participants and alumni of the CEU MBA program. Then Professor Achilles Georgiu will deliver a research presentation on virtual negotiations, dilemmas of trust and honesty. If you have any questions, please feel free to shoot them in the chat box and I will collect them for the Q&A. Yusaf, the floor is yours.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to be here with everybody virtually, as it were, as we come towards the tail end of the current pandemic. I'd like to spend a few minutes with you this evening, just sort of talking a little bit about, does it make sense right now to be doing an MBA, and which I suspect you'll discover, I believe, is the case. And then I want to talk you through what is valuable and distinctive about CEU's Executive MBA program, the MBA for the open world. It's almost a running cliche today. If you just scan the technology press, the business press, and so on, we are clearly in a world in which unpredictable change is becoming a feature, not a bug of the world system. We had the biggest financial crisis in history in 2008. Less than half a decade later, we had the biggest refugee crisis in Europe since World War II. And now we're living through the biggest pandemic for a century. And these are just the macro forces. Behind the macro forces, we have some fundamental transformations taking place. Were happening anyway, with or without the transformation, the growth of the Internet of Things, the increasing role for artificial intelligence and business analytics in business decision making. What this means, I think, across the board is we have to fundamentally rethink the way organizations strategize and compete. We're focusing ever more on so-called strategic agility. We're looking increasingly at modular forms of consumption, where it's not just about product versus service versus experience. It's a bundling of all three things that creates value. What we're also seeing is the emergence of dominant business models. And in particular, I think the one that really stands out currently is the dominance of so-called platform business models. And if you look at company valuations and publicly traded companies, it is these platforms which are now regarded as the most valuable companies on earth, far outstripping traditional integrated manufacturing or complex service organizations. And in addition to that, I think, and perhaps as a consequence of that, although I'm not a political scientist, I think what we're also seeing is a fundamental shift in political discourses. I think for almost 3 decades, there has been a dominant view that, globalization is an unstoppable thing, that we're on a sort of an inevitable path towards greater economic and political integration in the world. And I think these crises that we've been living through in the last decade or so have also begun to change the discourse. I think we're beginning to see what many people call semi-globalization. So areas of the world economy which are highly integrated, but then also significant, sort of barriers between these highly integrated blocks of the world economy. And that's, most obviously sort of seen in the way in which the internet is regulated in different ways in different parts of the world, right? With GDPR in Europe, the way the Chinese government has essentially closed access to many foreign digital firms, and the way the US and the increasing activism of states attorneys general and the US Federal Department of Justice in trying to sort of tackle the market power that large digital firms have gained in the last 10 to 15 years. And so the question is, with all of this going on, what does an MBA degree do to help you better prosper in this increasingly unpredictable world? And as you can see here on the screen, several important sources of opinion and influential sources of opinion have begun to question the idea about why an MBA is worth it today. And what I'd like to sort of suggest to you is that, in fact, an MBA is worth it, but it depends on the kind of MBA you're doing. And we believe at CEU that the Executive MBA program that we offer gives you opportunities to be uniquely prepared for this increasingly unpredictable world. Now let's look at sort of different kinds of MBA programs, right? So let's think about an MBA in a large city somewhere, let's say in Europe, just for argument's sake. What do they typically look like? Well, they have fairly standardized curriculums. That's a consequence of many things. Often the faculty sort of do things in a fairly kind of incremental way. Maybe accreditation standards limit innovation and so on. Most of the time, the faculty that you will work with will be local faculty who will be based in the city. About 1/5 of the student body will be international, but the majority of people taking the program will be people from your city, from the country. They can be expensive. So in some large cities, you can be paying up to 80,000 euros a year, euros for the program, plus expenses. But the benefit, of course, is that you can continue to work while you do this program on a part-time or frequently weekend basis. And then if we go to the other end of the spectrum, you can think about sort of the world's leading business schools, the ones that are at the very top of people's awareness and perception of quality. And what do you get there? Well, the top business schools have clearly differentiated mission-driven MBA curricula. We may not agree with the mission and the vision of the organization, but they're definitely differentiated, and they definitely they're trying to get a strong message out there about what they are. Often because these MBA programs have full-time MBAs as their flagship program, you have a much more international student body, right? Because people leave work and they go to these business schools where they study for up to 2 years. You get the campus experience, which I think is really valuable, in graduate school. You'll have faculty who are some of the leading faculty in the world, top credentials from all over the world. But the price tag, it can be up to 120,000 euros per year, plus all of the expenses that you have to incur by leaving your job and relocating to another place. There's going to be at least 1 year, and of course in North America, 2 years out of the job market, and you may have to relocate your family. And so I think this is where the CEU Executive MBA, I think, is uniquely positioned. First of all, we have a very strong mission, which we call the EMBA for the open world. I'm going to come back to what exactly that means later on in my presentation with you this evening. We have a highly international student body. CEU is one of the most international universities in the world, with students from more than 100 countries worldwide. As you're about to see momentarily, we have some outstanding faculty with top credentials who teach our classes. You will have the opportunity to study on 2 state-of-the-art campuses, one in Vienna and one, the photograph you can see in front of you is the one in Budapest. There's no work interruption required because it's a 10-module over 28-month program, and the tuition is considerably more attractive at 25,000 euros. And again, I'm going to come back to why we're able to offer such value at such a competitive price. Let me just sort of give you an example of a few of our faculty. Claudia Steinfelder, formerly of MIT, joined CEU. She offers courses on global macroeconomics, which provide sort of a tour d'horizon of the kind of macroeconomic and macro-political issues that I just started my presentation with today. Miklos Koren, who's one of the leading scholars in data analytics and leads Europe's #1 business analytics program, will be able to sort of work with you in terms of looking at things like how we can use data to better understand supply chains and so on. Isu Senyus is a assistant professor of marketing, and she's an expert in, among other things, in personal branding, which I think is extremely important from a sort of professional development career perspective. Michael Lebel is our Jean Monnet Chair in Energy Innovation Studies. He teaches a very popular elective on green growth, and he co-teaches the Entrepreneurship and Innovation class with a visiting professor from Stanford, Christian Silos. My co-director, Maciej Kisielowski, he's our professor of non-market strategy and expert on the interaction between business and regulation, an advisor to governments around the world on more effective public administration and making governments more strategic and efficient. Joy Chan, who has been continuously for more than a decade one of our most liked professors. She teaches finance, and she's extremely good at teaching finance to folks who may not have necessarily a strong finance background, significant professional experience before she joined us at CEU. Adam Zawodowski, who's an expert in asset pricing and financial markets, and he has a way to sort of take sort of quite cutting-edge theoretical perspectives on finance and making them meaningful for practitioners. And in addition to our full-time faculty, as I just mentioned before, we have a number of very distinguished visiting faculty. I mentioned Christian Silos from Stanford, who teaches innovation. Miklos Savary from Columbia University teaches an elective on digital marketing. Hui Chen from University of Zurich is one of our accounting professors. Omar Hernandez is our professor of operations management from Berkeley. And Milena Nikolova is a behavioral economist who's a specialist in looking at marketing, particularly in the field of tourism. So this is what the program looks like. As you can see, it's kind of set up into modules. We start in August with a 9-day module, and then most of the modules aside from the first modules are 4-day long, except for our summer modules. It's important to note that in our summer modules, we have 2 focuses. We have some core classes, our leadership program, and electives. And the electives are an opportunity for you to kind of do 2 things, try some new areas which you think might be valuable for your professional development, but it also gives you an opportunity to do a little bit of focus as well by taking electives in related areas. So outside of the 9-day modules, we have typical 4-day modules. You come in on a Thursday or a Friday, and you leave on a Sunday or a Monday, which is great because you can sort of plan your work around that. Another important thing about our program structure and our scheduling is we've chosen to place our modules around as many popular public holidays in Europe, which will sort of reduce the number of days you would have to take off work and take vacation days to complete the program. Once you graduate from the program, you become part of a very large alumni network, and we're absolutely delighted this evening to be joined by one of our alumni, Chris Nicholson from the US, who's going to talk a little bit about life at CEU and life after CEU and how that's worked out for him. But we have alumni all over the world. We have many active chapters across many countries, and you'll be very much part of that community of CEU alumni. Now, I mentioned to you earlier that I was going to talk about how is it that we can deliver all of this value in terms of education and alumni network and quality of faculty with a tuition rate of 25,000 euros. And the answer lies in the fact that CEU is the most well-endowed financially of any university in continental Europe. And that's because our founder and benefactor, George Soros, has invested more than $1 billion in CEU. Some of you may know that because of political issues with the Hungarian government, we were forced to move much of our activities to Vienna. In fact, most of our teaching, apart from the Budapest modules, take place in Vienna. And George Soros has continued to support us and provide us with additional support for our activities. Now, what does the EMBA for the open world mean? We based it upon several principles. The first principle is that we are fundamentally skeptical towards dogmas, hierarchies, and privileges. We believe that talent and merit are much more important than pre-existing hierarchies. And that's very much part of the concept of open society. We believe that all ideas, wherever they come from, whatever political, ideological basis they have, can be challenged. And we're a strong believer in debate and discussion, because through that process, better ideas, newer ideas, more effective solutions to society's problems emerge. In a world in which sort of political populism and narratives appears to be gaining the upper hand, we believe in facts and arguments rather than narratives. And this is reflected in the curriculum. Our emphasis on data analysis, for example, as core elements of the curriculum is demonstration of our belief in that. We also believe fundamentally that a really successful MBA experience is based upon diversity. And in the EMBA classroom, as I'll explain to you momentarily, we have a very diverse classroom in terms of nationalities, in terms of professional experience, and in terms of perspectives on how the world works. And we think that kind of conversation is super valuable. And last but not least, because I won't go through the entire slide here, I mean, I think we fundamentally believe that the role of a successful manager isn't just to generate financial value for the organizations that they work for. They're also there to bring positive change to society, hence the concept of the EMBA for the open world. So what does our classroom look like? We have about 65 participants with 14 years average work experience, with a minimum of 3 years leadership experience of that 14 years. You can see the kind of classroom environment. Of course, this photo was taken before physical distancing was a requirement because of the current pandemic, but you can see we have state-of-the-art classroom setups where we have a very open sort of way of engaging with the class. The modules are very intense, immersive experiences. So when you come to us, you'll be with us working very, very hard during the modules. The faculty will give you assignments to do both before you come and afterwards. I'm sure somebody may have some questions about that in the Q&A afterwards. And if someone was to ask me, what's the key message of how we want to develop our participants, I would say that our goal is to take functional and operational experts to becoming strategic leaders. And that's why we have an emphasis in the curriculum on both strategy and leadership together. Now, the teaching methods will vary subject by subject, depending on they are, but there's a general emphasis on interactive case-based learning. Our faculty speaker today is, I think, one of the best examples of how that is done effectively in the classroom, and you'll get to hear more of that momentarily from Achilles. So that's our classroom. The tuition rate is 25,000 euros. We have a number of scholarship opportunities on that. I would put them into two separate categories. One kind of scholarship is what we call a merit-based scholarship. We have a general merit-based scholarship, which is called the Open World Scholarship, which is for highly ranked applicants. But we also have country-specific and theme-specific merit-based scholarships. So, for example, looking at issues of diversity, women executives, and so on. And then we have what we call needs-based scholarships, and this is where we can offer a discount on the tuition based upon your stated income in the application, and we have an income threshold which we use for calculating that kind of that needs-based scholarship. Now, in terms of getting to the modules, and also in terms of how much it costs you when you're with us, we've negotiated some pretty good deals in terms of accommodation. So we have special rates at partner hotels in Vienna and Budapest that go the range from top of the range 5-star hotels like the Four Seasons or the Marriott to more affordable options, 3-star options in the city, both in Vienna and Budapest. And we've also got discounted fares offered to you if you book through Austrian Airlines and Lufthansa Group with a special code which is given to you once you're in the program. Important deadline is June 6th, 2021. That's the deadline for an August start. So that's all from me, but I'm sure you'll have lots of questions, but I'm going to hand back to Thomas. Thanks very much.
Thank you
very much.
I would like to introduce Lydia and Georgiu to the group, so our attendees can get to know current participants of the EMBA class. Lydia is Head of Public Affairs and Communications and HR at Pelion Pharma, and Georgiu is Lead Treasury Expert at Raiffeisenbank. And let's start with you, Lydia. Can you please tell us something about, where you're coming from, what your background is, and what made you choose CEU over other programs?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Thomas. Hello, everybody. I am a lawyer by education, and as Thomas mentioned, right now I'm working, in a position of somebody who tries to manage, a few different fields in one hand, because I am responsible for the strategic HR, as we call it, within the framework of my company, and I am also responsible for communication and public affairs, which is pretty complicated in my country. I'm from Poland, because my company operates in a field which is highly over-regulated. So this is pretty demanding task. And after 7 years of my work for Pelion, I decided somehow to help myself and to develop my skills and to put my knowledge, my practical knowledge in place, supported by the knowledge that I can get from the CEU and the EMBA. And that was extremely important for me to find a place where I can develop not only my knowledge, but also that will be mission driven. And that was for me number one reason why I decided to try to work and to study at CEU. Is it, you want me to add something?
You mentioned that you have a legal background.
Yes.
As far as I know, you studied at Yale. Is that correct before?
Yes. I was selected as the Yale World Fellow as a second person from Poland and first woman. And I got a scholarship from Poland, a scholarship from Yale. The program is called the Yale World Fellows. This is a very good year for Poland, because the third person and the second woman from Poland was selected this year. And I am very proud, because that was my nominee. I nominated her. So I am very happy that she was selected. But yes, I spent almost 1 year at Yale developing my leadership skills there.
Yusaf will talk about the leadership later, because I think the leadership will be a question anyways from one of the from the audience. Can you tell us something about the diversity in class, not just with regard to nationalities, of course, but also with regard to industry backgrounds, education backgrounds? You're not the only legal expert in class, but there's other people with different backgrounds in class as well.
Yes, this is the beauty of my cohort, because we really come from different environments, right? And for example, my group, because as you may know or may not, between the classes, we work in a small groups. And for example, my group, I am a lawyer, but also we have, representative of the NGO sector who is right now dealing with anti-Semitism and xenophobia. We have entrepreneur in our cohort, and we all come from different environments. And this is really the beauty, because you can really learn from each other. You can share your experience, and we are complementary. I mean, we really fit together very well, because we can share different views during our meetings. Every weekend meeting, I would like to underline that we meet very often, and we really like it. And this is really extremely useful and helpful. And honestly speaking, I had no idea that you can bond with somebody that you meet mainly remotely, right? And but the fact that we are so different and we represent different knowledge, different experience, and also different age, this is the most important strength of this group.
Well, thank you very much for pointing out the diversity in class. I mean, just to put it in context for our attendees, the modular format of the Executive MBA allows participants to commute to the program, because international people wouldn't have the time to commute to the modules if they would take place more often, like on a bi-weekly basis. But since we only have 3 modules a year on average, it is possible to combine work, private life, and study life at the same time. And thus we have an international class. Thank you very much, Lydia. I would like to include Georgiu into the conversation. He's from the banking industry. Can you tell us something about why you chose CEU, why you think it's a good idea for your career?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I have a really strong quantitative background. I'm a macroeconomist. I was studying mathematics, forecasting, econometrics. So, but I felt that I need like to learn more about management and soft skills. So that's why I decided to look for an MBA. And actually what Yusaf and you just mentioned, I really like this modular format because I didn't want to skip a year. So I didn't want to go to an MBA and just stay there for 1 year. And the option B that you also mentioned is that I'm traveling every month for a long weekend to a European city. So in my case, I wanted to go to Spain. But yeah, it's still a lot of time, and actually, I mean, you have to work, you have to study, you have to be with your family, so it's quite complicated. So I really like this modular format because in this way, I can. So when I have to study, I can focus on my studies. I can be at CEU. I can just concentrate on the modules, and when I have to work, I can just work. I can be with my family, and I can spend my free time. So I really like this format. And also that I really liked in CEU, that I found that it's not an MBA factory. So in other universities where I applied, I just found that okay, so this is a factory. I mean, I'm arriving, and the output is like, I don't know, 1 year later, 2 years later, I will come out with an MBA. But I found that it's not really personal, and I didn't feel the attachment, or like I didn't feel any goal or yeah. So in a nutshell, that's why I applied to CEU.
You just mentioned the catchphrase MBA faculty, and I think this perfectly points out like who we are looking for. We're not looking for, you know, the most candidates to fill a class with warm bodies, but we're looking for the best candidates to get into class. That's why we have a very competitive application process, and we want, you know, we are mission driven, and we have people from the whole, you know, diverse political spectrum in class, in order to ensure diversity and interaction in class. Can you talk about the diversity again, from your perspective? I mean, you have a different background than Lydia, but maybe you have another perspective to add.
Yeah, no, I can just tell the same that Lydia said, that actually my team, we have one woman who has a PhD in mathematics. She's working in data science. There is another woman who has a master from Cambridge University, and she's a consultant in pharma. There is another guy who is working in M&A in pharma, and he has an MBA from Bocconi. And we have also somebody who is really familiar with the project management and has an international knowledge. So I think it's like a quite diverse team, and I learned a lot from them. So I can learn from my classmates, from my team members, and not just from teachers and in the class.
I would pass on the next question to Lydia, go back to Lydia. Can you tell us something about the academic excellence of that Georgiu just mentioned in class? Can you tell us about your teachers that you have been interacting with so far?
I can just, I mean, after these 2 modules that we experienced, I can just confirm what Yusaf said, that, we have enormous opportunity to learn from the best and from people who are really engaged in the process. They do not only provide knowledge and education, they provide themselves, the spirit and the sense of the group. And this is absolutely amazing. And the fact that we can be in touch with them constantly, it's also remarkable. Absolutely, it's amazing. We are provided with such an enormous help and support, and not only content related, but also, as a managers, as people, as leaders, this is amazing. And I can just tell at the end that really, it's such a great joy to be a student of Joy, and to learn from her, that this is absolutely amazing. And I think that everybody from my cohort can say the same. But of course, not only her. I mean, everybody was excellent during the first 2 modules, and we are looking forward for the 3rd one.
You just answered the question that I had in mind for Georgiu. I wanted to ask him about the approachability, about the approachability of faculty, of the program office. Is it like a distance feeling, or do you have the impression that it's very approachable?
No, I totally have the impression that it's approachable. That's why I said that when I first contacted you, I thought that this is not an MBA factory, and indeed, I started 1 year ago, and I just can say that it was a good feeling, and it's quite true. So, whenever I have a question and I write to you or I write to any teacher, I always receive a reply, and a quite detailed reply.
Thank you very much. I would like to include Chris into this conversation because he has done this program at CEU already, and I think he's going to provide some interesting perspective to this open day. Just for the audience, Chris Nicholson is partner and portfolio manager at Aaron Harbor Capital in the US. Hi, Chris. Can you tell us about your background, why you chose CEU back then, and where you are now, and who you are? I think you're mute, Chris.
Yeah, yes.
Hi, sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, I was raised in the Northeast United States, a little bit outside of Boston, Massachusetts. My dad was an entrepreneur and an inventor in medical products, and my mom was an executive at another large medical manufacturer. She's 77 and still works like crazy, and I had to try to disabuse her of the notion that being an essential worker was something to, take too much pride in lately. Tried to get her to work from home a bit more. Pursuing my education, I was always looking for, something unique, something valuable, not just sort of earning the right stamps. So when I chose undergrad, I looked fairly far and wide, only in the US, but ended up going to Harvard, which was right nearby where I grew up. But I thought, just clearly the best choice. In terms of my peers, in terms of the offering. And then I went into, so I studied applied mathematics with a focus on economics as my area of application. Basically, it was sort of starting from that engineer mindset of my dad, but looking to really understand nuance and sort of move from science into social science, if you will, realizing that those social science problems are actually often harder than kind of the rocket science that, my dad was trained in. And I went into management consulting, sort of a particularly strategy-focused boutique founded by some ex-Boston Consulting Group senior staff. The focus was on technology companies, growth companies, often sort of earlier stage, venture funded, and also giving advice to sort of growth private equity and venture capital firms, trying to understand opportunities in different markets. Again, I kind of pursued that thinking that it was the best first training to really gather, a variety of tools that would empower me later on. I moved to San Francisco for a number of years and was working with tech companies, including a venture with my dad in surgical implants for spinal surgery, back pain relief, basically. Was pretty deeply connected in the venture capital community and sort of Silicon Valley innovation. I had thought sort of up to and through that period that I wanted to be a venture investor. And then as I saw the sort of bubble preceding the global financial crisis forming, I sort of rekindled some earlier interests in just understanding the global economy, economic development generally, whether, for emerging or developed nations, and, just how everything fit together in that global economy, what caused, bubbles and crashes, just figuring that would be very valuable knowledge, and thought about pursuing a career that was more focused on investing in liquid markets and in areas beyond equities, which had been just kind of the thing in the air as the most profitable and interesting part of the markets in my,
Right.
kind of environment, prior mindset. So that's where I, set off for Europe and just looked to, directly know more of the world. And where I found CEU, of course, founded and supported by one of the world's great thinkers. And, as I've kind of gone into somewhat of a similar field of investing, I came to understand more and more that, to be a great investor, you have to be somewhat, pioneering new knowledge and coming to subtle understandings, but subtle with a high degree of precision at the same time, in similar way to kind of an academic researcher. And so, coming to CEU just helped me to, broaden out that toolkit, and the intimacy really allows you to customize, allows you to be, to shape the education that really gives you the differentiation that you're seeking. It just helped me to be so much more cosmopolitan. I guess my feeling prior to coming into the MBA was the markets had really globalized. All of the people that were participating in the markets in some way had not globalized that well. And so I was trying to be, well ahead of others in understanding, the variety of components in the kind of global financial markets. Just getting a lot of time, a few feet away from my professors or, over a drink afterward, and, being able to sort of look for out of the box ideas, get beyond just kind of the canon of what kind of MBA 101 is. I just think provided a lot of value in shaping me as effective thinker in finance and markets.
Right. I wanted to ask you how CEU helped you gaining, becoming that personality that you are today in your position that you are today. How did it help?
Yeah, well, I think I felt that I understood the US economy very well, and a lot about business from kind of the bottom up and sort of microeconomic perspective, business economics. And, I was looking to cultivate that much more of the top down, ways to think about the world as a whole, and, what's happening in the moment, what kind of context can I have? So, it grew my appreciation of history, kind of a range of social sciences connecting back into understanding business and economics. Obviously, the backing of CEU as a university with a wide range of good thinkers and innovative thinkers beyond just the MBA program, I think was a great support. And all those dynamics that Professor Akbar was pointing out earlier, there's just been a number of great disruptions, and coming to a program that was eager to be highly differentiated and innovative, and dovetailed well with being prepared for kind of maybe constant change and just diagnosing what's the meaning of kind of virtualizing all of our meetings, or just brand new rules of what we can and can't do, has been really valuable for me navigating markets which are very flexible themselves and fast moving.
Thanks. You just mentioned support. That brings me to the last question about the alumni network that you are a part of. Can you tell the audience something about, how you are interacting, the organization, the local chapters, however you are engaged with,
Yeah. I mean, I think, at some of the MBA factories that do produce maybe sort of valuable but kind of standardized output. I had then and continue to have a lot of contact with my professors, just, pinging them about various ideas. Oh, I thought of you as I was, reading this or contemplating this dynamic. What do you think? I do the same with my peers, just getting input on, hey, what is the political system in Turkmenistan really like these days? Tell me about, its natural gas industry, a lot of kind of unique niche insights that I would never have had, had I stayed in my home country, had I been at, less of a intense, deep kind of dive with this diverse set of colleagues. And, I think we're just very fond of each other. And
that's great. Just to put it in context for the attendees, the alumni network consists of 18,000, the CEU alumni network consists of 18,000 professionals all over the world. And literally wherever you go in the world, there's a local chapter, there's regional chapters that you can, connect with, that you can mingle with, that you can network with. And it's truly a network that you can count on.
Right.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. I would like to pass on the baton to Achilles now. Achilles will deliver his keynote speech on virtual negotiations, the dilemmas of trust and honesty. I would like to introduce Achilles briefly to you. He's an innovation management expert, an infosopher, professional maze runner. He's the program director of CEU Masters in Technology Management and Innovation. He's member of the board of the CEU Innovations Lab. And at IBM, he's the Technology Support Services and Sales and Business Development Leader for Eastern Europe. Thank you, Achilles. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you. Unfortunately, I don't see you now. I have changed something in my setup. So I brought you a topic which is a part of one of my courses. So the course which I teach, it will be in the summer module, consultative selling and negotiations. And one part of this course deals with a very hot topic, so virtual negotiation. So as of today is exactly 1 year since I personally moved into this environment, and we had a lot of experience already out of how to negotiate virtually. I selected this topic because I think it's interesting for everybody, and hopefully you can learn take something away out of this. And it's very, very current. So we use this every day, but I would like to challenge you whether you use it properly, or are you aware of any techniques which can be applied? Personally, one of my biggest questions around this topic is a dilemma of trust. How we can gain trust by negotiating virtually. And this is even more interesting if you are doing sales, like I do. I work in sales. I have to negotiate with clients on virtual environment, which is making it even more challenging. So let me walk you through this. This is one of the screens you see usually in virtual environment, but I wanted to put some other more examples of how is to conduct a virtual meeting nowadays. I'm sure you're familiar with most of these situations, which you can see in the picture here. And my favorite meme in this topic is this one. And I think whenever we start any negotiation and call, these are the words we first hear in a virtual discussion, virtual negotiations. In reality, it is something more, a part of what you see in the screen. So you need a setup. You need to set up your virtual environment. And I suppose most of your flats and most of our environments are in such kind of form that we divide our floor into what is a meeting view, what the camera can see, and what is the non-meeting view zone in your environment. But my real favorite, and I would even challenge if anybody of you dares to stand up, whether we have we show a part of our life in front of the camera, but we might hide some of the rest. And I'm sure you are familiar with this. And most of the time, we are also dressed in a form which is suitable and easy to stay in front of the camera the whole day. This topic is already 1 year around. And if you look around, there are a lot of articles already raised. I like one which is written in Harvard Business Review recently. And most of the things I brought you today are coming from this article. The main question in the article, are virtual negotiations more or less effective at creating value for counterparties? So think about it. What do you think? If we will be in class, I would definitely challenge this and ask you to share your opinion. And based on what we had previous classes, there are people who say, in some sense, yes. So we can be more effective because we can collaborate together when creating, for example, a contract or typing the terms and conditions of the statement of work we are preparing. But there are other areas where we are losing the power of negotiations, what we have in let's say, in a face-to-face possibility and discussion. One of the biggest challenges is that we have competing messages. So if you are in a room, you respect the other by turning off all other channels of communication. You have the eye contact, so you can see whether there is a tendency or not. But in the virtual environment, it's very difficult because there are competing messages. And think about yourself. So you are sitting in front of your computer, and you don't only have the camera seeing me, but maybe you have the chat room, maybe you have your emailing system or web assigned, Twitters. So you have hundreds of channels of communication and noise coming towards you. And this makes the whole more difficult. So how effectively can you communicate if you are in a channel of noise with competing messages coming towards you? Just to add to this, I don't know if you are aware of this law of forgetting. Obviously, this is not academically proved, but I like it very much because it's applied to everything we do. So usually, we forgot 50% of what we hear immediately. So anything I tell you today, by the time you go asleep, you will already forget half of it. So there's something even worse, that we already forget 75% of what we heard in a meeting or in a discussion within 2 months. But what makes this even more interesting, and this is very, very crucial in sales, is that after the 60% of what we remember are not accurate because we are adding things to it, things that we have never said, nobody has ever said before. And this is a challenge, how you can keep messages, transfer messages, and how you can come to conclusions based on these facts. One other challenge which I observed, and this is my personal observation and difference between negotiations in a room or being online. So in a room, you have a different setup. But when you negotiate online, you have kind of one directional multi-channel of communication. I talk, you hear, everybody hears, I can maybe see you, but we are sacrificing the possibility of parallel communications, not to mention body language and everything else. But for example, if you're in a negotiation in a meeting room, you can have communication, eye contacts, I get you, I'm with you, I lost you, he says stupid things. So you can communicate in between the people, even non-verbally. But this is kind of sacrificed in a virtual environment where we have one person talking, others towards others, and maybe it's not always bidirectional, but maybe most of the cases one directional. So if we raise a question then, and also the article came to the conclusion that negotiating virtual tends to leave parties with poorer objective results and feeling less warm and trust towards one another. How do you feel about that? I'm very much aligned to this. So, and I think it's not only the poorer objective results, that's something we can get through the time. For example, if I collaborate with people I knew from before, that's easy, that's okay. But how to gain the trust with people I met first time on a virtual environment? And this is the dilemma. There is always a dilemma of trust and honesty. How honest you can be, how warm this relationship can be built, how you can reach the point you can get the trust from the other. So obviously you want to sell, you want to negotiate, you want to discuss your pain points, you want to get the trust. Now, in this point, I would be asking you, but think about it for a moment before I tell you my hints, how you can increase the level of trust in virtual negotiations. How would you? What kind of actions, what kind of hints do you have in mind of increasing the level of trust in a virtual negotiation? So let me share with you my top actions and activities. And this is like a toolkit you can take away and use whichever you like of that or whichever you accept. First of all, when you go and negotiate, and if this is a sales type of negotiation, it's always worth to plan it ahead and to define the roles. So if this is a many people with many people negotiating, this is, for example, one of the exercises we do in my course, to have many people negotiating with many people, which is often happening in our real life, but not many often happens in education. That's why I say it's absolutely a soft skill development. Then it's good to assign roles as if you would be going to a physical negotiation, but here the roles might be different. Somebody in the team should be the one to attend, somebody to talk, somebody to listen, and maybe somebody could become the orchestrator who in the back channel communicates with the rest of the team, navigating how they go through the discussion. My second, let's say, recommendation would be to invest. Buy a big monitor to have the possibilities to see all the participants in a bigger scale, not just in a small monitor in front of your laptop. It's usually nowadays it's not so expensive and you have to do it every day. You negotiate, you discuss on a daily basis. Why not to have the positive experience to see the others like if you were being closer to each other. Believe me, if you have a big enough monitor, you can see the body language, the face, changes in emotions and all these things. The next one is what many people avoid doing, I don't know why, is set the proper lighting. Buy a light in front of you. Many times you can see people who are having the light behind of them and you just see a black face. Does this help you increase the level of trust? Obviously, no. It's like you feel without even knowing that he has something to hide. Although that the only problem is that he didn't have the proper set of the environment for negotiating virtually. As I said before, if you set the rules and the roles, not rules, rules also, but roles before the negotiation, you can have a parallel chat channel, maybe, not the chat channel of the virtual environment, but use a parallel channel to share messages between your team. If this is a negotiation between counterparties, but from teams, between different teams, it's always good to have an alignment within the team, which can be done in a parallel channel of communication. One of the most interesting, which I read in the article, and I also agree with that, is sometimes worth to hide your self-view. What do I mean with that? So obviously, when you turn on your camera, don't hide your camera, but just hide from the tiles of pictures yourself. Many of the online tools, discussion, negotiation tools have this possibility because we intend to look at ourselves 60% of the time. Oh, I'm dressed correct, nice, my hair is okay, I need some light, oh, the kid jumped in. So no, if this disturbs you, then just simple hide your self-view. That's one of the recommendations. And then my favorite one, use the belly rule. Initially, they called it belt rule. I renamed it belly rule because I have some belly here. So the belly rule is that instead of having a camera view like this, turn towards the camera. So your belt should be pointing towards the camera and try to keep your upper body within the range of the camera. So don't be too close, too far. Give the possibility the other to gain the trust by seeing you, seeing your movements, seeing your emotions. And last but not least, obviously, in the last rule, I would say use a smaller number, but one thing is let's keep the upper limit of any kind of negotiations to 45 minutes. Respect the other party to have at least 5-10 minutes to recover, to have a bio break. With my team, I usually do 15 to 30 minutes discussions, short discussions. But if we are talking about negotiations where we really need to go down to the details, I think 45 minutes are needed. But you don't need more. If you cannot solve something in 45 minutes, you don't need more. Talking about time, you have something else. So if this is the first time you meet with somebody, there is a rule that there is the first 7 seconds that you can gain the first impression. And you will never have the second chance to make the first impression. This happens, this is very much true in the physical environment, but believe me, it also applies to the virtual environment. So when you first meet somebody in a virtual environment, your first 7 seconds are the most crucial. How you show yourself, how you introduce yourself, how you, after turning on your camera, what will they see? What is the environment they see? What is how your face is shown on the camera and all these things. And having said that, and before we turn in any questions you might raise, so feel free to drop them in the question and answers and also in the chat. Let me share with you my personal transformation during this year. And I will give you the scene behind the stage, how my virtual negotiation environment looks like. So this is my setup. I would have loved to be with you in a class and be able to work with you there, to discuss this topic with you there. But unfortunately, due to the circumstances, we don't have this possibility. But let me share with you how my setup looks like. And you know, I really like working even in this environment. I still prefer the physical one, but having a good atmosphere, it always helps you be happy and be able to raise the level of trust to the counterpart also in the negotiations. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Achilles. Do we have any questions from the audience, or Yusuf, do you want to start with your discussion? How do you convince the counterpart to turn on the cameras?
First of all, by turning yours on. And if you have many negotiations, you ask also your peers, your teammates. So it's like a rule, like obviously it's not easy, but you can. I'm not the best example because sometimes I can be a bit ironic. So it would be nice if I could see you as well, but obviously you don't say that to somebody you meet first time, but maybe for people you knew before, I would like to see you, how you are evolving. Have you made some more, took some more weight, maybe some joke, something. But you know, if you turn it on and if your camera view is set up properly, they can see you properly, they will sooner or later be eager also, okay, I should respect my counterpart respecting me to show also my view of camera.
And what do you think are potential safety issues of virtual negotiations?
Safety issue from security point of view. Obviously, they can take notes, they can record the negotiation. You know, in my class, we say, if you have to hide something, it's a different negotiation. Usually you should not have anything to hide. So if the counterpart records what you are negotiating with or what you tell to them, there should not be a problem. What is the safety? What do we mean? Obviously, if they put it online, that's a different question. This can happen in any negotiation, so they can record even without you knowing it. I have heard many times that people are showing you back, okay, I recorded what we have told me last time, what we have negotiated. The level of safety is I wouldn't say it's worse or different. Obviously, so the level, how you trust, you don't see everything, so it's different if you have a face-to-face. That's why you need to apply as many of the tools and tips and techniques which I shared, or maybe you have even more, I would be happy to hear about them. How to increase the level of trust without being scared about, as you said, safety on the other side. Questions to Achilles. Questions. How do you convince the counterpart? Yeah, I want to
do you recommend a bit more informal behavior in virtual negotiation as a trust builder?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, but again, I would have a different formality with somebody I meet first time, because then you have to, the first 7 seconds are very important. But if it's somebody which we have met several times, it's absolutely, might be more informal. I would not, you don't need to dress up every time, wear a tie, for example. And the other is that I observe that we sacrifice many times the chit chat, so the small talks. I don't know why. Why I observe this, that many people, because they are going quickly from one meeting to the other, they sacrifice the most interesting part. And we should be curious about each other. Even I don't care if we have less time to negotiate, to discuss. I'd rather also be interested about you. How are you? How are you today? And don't sacrifice that. Doesn't worth the effort, because with the virtual negotiations, we can go start. In the physical, first you have to enter to the room, maybe give a coffee, wait until the coffee arrives, and exit the room together. And in this virtual environment, we don't have that. We just turn off, turn on. So we should try to find a way between the turn on and the start of the negotiation to give some floor for the small talks. Try it. It's up to you. If you do this, then the other part will answer. Why wouldn't them? They are also interested. They would also be curious to be in a negotiation. It's a different than the ones which they used to do every day during the last 1 year.
Which small talk topics would you recommend, and what topics would you leave out?
This is always personal. So this, when we say negotiations, it's consultative selling. In my course, we say we go prepared. So if I negotiate with somebody, I go prepared. I am also prepared in what small talk I would touch with that specific guy. And if I know him, it's easier. If I don't know, I do my preparation. I do my homework up beforehand. Obviously, I personally try to avoid asking questions about questions that they get many times, like how is COVID situation? This is boring. So maybe ask something different, which would still be interesting. Don't be the one who raise a boring question, and that will not increase the level of trust. That will not start the conversation, or let's say the small talk. Okay, now again, yes, now yeah, let's move on. So yeah, that's the type.
I do have a question that refers to what you've said previously. Are plants or interesting art in view part of same?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Are plants or interesting art in view part of same? Do you think
But,
that establishing trust, etc.?
I didn't hear all the words, but where is it written?
Are plants or interesting art in view part of same, which refers to establishing trust?
Can you help me? I don't get this. So are parts, where do you see this? Who wrote this?
Chris, maybe you're mute.
Yes.
Please.
Hi. Yeah. No, you have.
Rephrase it. Help me, guys. Sorry.
You have some greenery in the background and an interesting vase or something. It just, seems to humanize you. I was curious if that's, strategic, or if just some nature or something puts us in a mood to connect.
Yes, and I have others. So every time which I have negotiations, I change the background. I have like this, for example,
Hey.
and I have also my favorite one is this slide. I have like a neon, and I have a Yoda which he moves, a small Yoda, and so I changed the setup. When it was Christmas, I had Christmas setup. This is exactly answering what Thomas was asking, how to start small talk. Change your background. If you have regular meeting with somebody, put something just for fun there, and then that immediately triggers a discussion. I know it's stupid, but I don't know. I have to talk with too many people every day. I also seek to find to hear about something else apart of what we have to negotiate anyhow. They're unavoidable, I would say.
Yusuf is raising his hand.
Yusaf, well, you should not raise. You just tell. Yusuf, you are not a shy guy.
But a believer in protocol virtually. Yeah. I've got some anecdotal evidence, and I'd be interested in your view on this. Talking to sort of, people involved in large CapEx negotiations, that they're finding getting to yes much more difficult in a virtual environment than it would be in a face-to-face environment. What's your sense of these kinds of larger, longer-term decisions?
It's much more difficult. That's why you need to invest how to simplify it, and that's why the topics I brought you, I don't say they bring you back on the normal level as if you would go for a coffee together, and usually the decisions are not made on the desk of negotiation, but in the coffee break after or in between. Yes, and this is what we sacrifice with this thing. I believe it's enormously difficult to establish new connections. So if it's totally different, if I speak with somebody who I knew for years before, we already know how the reaction is, what are his pain points, how his kids are. So it's easier. We just change the channel of communication. But establishing a new and developing a new connection in a virtually, that's a tough one. So I really admire, let's say, the digital sellers, which we have this status. And in some sense, all salespeople are becoming digital, but I still believe there is a bit different of the traditional digital sellers and those sellers who had to transform to digital just hopefully for a period. But on long run, I believe we will have a more hybrid mode. So we learned how to use this virtual negotiation for things which can be done better virtually. So if I need to negotiate a contract, I still rather do it this way instead of to go in a big meeting room, share a view and type and so on. We can share a document and modify together. So there are areas which can be more effective in this environment, but fully agree with you. To get to a yes, it's longer. It's a longer journey. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, I think listening to your typically sort of to the point presentation, I'm super envious of your ability to do this. I think that there are a lot of contingencies here, right? So, you wonder whether the age of the negotiators might matter, different generations, facility with technology, so generation X versus generation Y. You wonder if that has an impact. Since I do a fair amount of work in the Gulf these days, you think about sort of shared values and societal cultural forces behind negotiation techniques. I think this is not a question, it's more of a statement, because I just really enjoy interacting with you, but this is a perfect natural experiment here for someone to go out and find out about these different contingencies and how they influence the ability to do virtual negotiations.
Absolutely. And that's why I already work on it, how to embed this into my course, which is a soft skill development. Can you imagine this? You need to educate people on soft skill development, and I have to do it now, sometimes even virtually. So that's why we said, okay, instead of trying to show virtually what we should do physically, why don't we also put this part in the course of how you can do this virtually? So we learn this and we can practice this even as part of my course. Definitely, it's absolutely a good experiment, good learning curve. I wish we could go back more to the face-to-face, but this is something we have to accept now.
Yeah, thanks very much, Achilles.
I think let's go to the last question from the audience, which is which application is most used by people today? Zoom, WebEx, etc.
So I have used everything. So this is my personal view. Obviously, I should not marketize anything. It depends on what you do. So if I teach, for teaching, I think Zoom is the best because it works differently than others. WebEx is used mostly in the business environment. Teams is used in business environments. There are others like the Google, but I think from technology point of view, Zoom use less of your resources. If you have to negotiate with many people, maybe Zoom is better. Now, this is exactly a good example. You can hear my dogs barking because I'm home. I cannot make him silent. So anyhow, but from technology point of view, knowing a bit behind, Zoom is the best. Obviously, they said there is security problem. So maybe your question before was that how safe is, how maybe you can do more in a WebEx environment, it's more secure. I don't know about security differences. I prefer Zoom because I have much more flexibility than other technologies. But that's my personal view, obviously. Daniel asked this, yeah.
Thank you very much. I would like to, thank you very much, Achilles.
Thank you.
I would like to move to the Q&A session with Yusaf, because I've collected a couple of questions from the audience. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the COVID pandemic. What are COVID measures in place on campus by CEU Executive MBA? And are we moving to online education? And if not, why not?
Thank you for that question. So we have two principles in terms of managing the pandemic. Our first principle is we will do everything we can within our power to enable to enable in-class education, just to repeat, in-class education. So we want face-to-face education because our talented faculty like Achilles are, you can see he's pretty good online, but you can imagine how much better he is in the classroom. That's our first principle. And our second principle is we follow every public health requirement that's necessary. So if you put those two principles together, what that means is if we are allowed to operate a university classroom, we will make sure that happens, and we will do so in line with all public health requirements. So let me give you an example. Last year in our November module, our two wonderful current participants had to do antigen rapid COVID tests before the module began, right? And that was one way in which we could kind of increase the health security of the module. And of course, we ensured that there was ample physical distance between participants in the classrooms, and of course, the mask mandate was fully observed. So, that's our principle. We believe that real education takes place face to face, where networking opportunities, which I think are one of the key value adds to an MBA program are there, and we will do everything we can in our power to make that happen in line with public health requirements at the time.
Thank you very much. How does the assessment take place? Are there any exams during the module?
Yeah, so as I briefly mentioned during the team presentation, the program presentation, sorry, I've been doing some online teaching, so it's kind of in the head. It depends on the subject. So, you know, if you're doing finance, you're probably going to have an exam after the module. If you're doing a more discursive subject like leadership, it's going to be much more experiential. If you're doing a strategy class, there's going to be a lot of emphasis on team analysis of cases. So we have the full range of assessment methodologies, which are appropriate to the kind of subject that you're taking. Now, the faculty do not do any assessment during the module. So in other words, what happens is you're in class, you're engaged, you're learning, but the professors don't say, okay, now there's going to be a test for an hour. They don't do that. They make sure you have a pre-module assignment, which is something to get you warmed up, get you prepared for the immersive experience, and then a deliverable of some kind. It might be a team deliverable, it might be an individual deliverable to demonstrate your learning and attainment from the module itself.
Thank you very much. Is there a thesis?
No, there is no thesis. It's an American MBA degree, so we don't do a thesis, but we do have a capstone project, which actually, with the module coming up tomorrow, I'm going to sort of probably say a few words to everyone tomorrow about this capstone project. Basically, what it is it's a curated portfolio of learning experiences that you've had as a consequence of doing the MBA. So that can be a range of things. It will be a team activity that you thought most contributed to your learning, an individual activity that contributed to your learning. There'll also be a mentoring element that can either be a mentoring of a colleague within your organization, or it can also be an opportunity to mentor one of CEU's talented graduate students who are pre-experienced, and we have a system for assigning MBA participants to mentees. So no thesis requirement.
Thank you very much. A question about the accreditation. Can you tell us about the advantages of US and EU accreditation and the EMBA accreditation and Achilles?
Yes, I saw in the Q&A there was an anonymous question, and I'm generally reluctant to respond to people who are hiding online. So whoever that person is, I'd be happy to answer that question if they reveal who they are. Speaking to Achilles' point about honesty and transparency. So, you know, EMBA is a program level accreditation, which means that the Executive MBA program is accredited by the leading British program accreditation authority. Now, you know, EQUIS is what we call an institutional accreditation, and in the market today for accreditation, there are two major institutional accrediting bodies. EQUIS, which is the European standard offered by the European Foundation for Management Development, and the AACSB standard. I can't remember the acronym, but it's the US standard. We are now in the process of pursuing AACSB accreditation in line with the fact that we are an American university.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us more about the electives? What topics do they cover?
Well, you'll have an outstanding opportunity to work with Achilles in his elective, which, looking at the current voting of the current group, is quite popular at the moment. So we might have to stop taking applications for his class. But we basically try to offer a range of different electives. Our model for choosing the kinds of electives, our algorithm, if you like, is we want to draw on the expertise of our faculty. I mentioned to you during the presentation, and we want to have a broad range of disciplinary perspectives. So we're going to have marketing electives, operations electives, technology electives, econ electives, strategy electives. And typically what happens is in the summer session in August, we have 16 total electives to choose, and you choose one elective from one of 4 slots. So each summer you'll do 4 electives. And since there are 3 summer modules, you'll take a total of 12. Plus we have spring electives where we have 2 and you choose 1. And what happens is that each year you're in the program, a different set of electives are offered the following year. So in a 3-year cycle, you will have the opportunity to consider taking from a list of around 50 different electives.
Great, thank you. What is the importance of leadership in the curriculum?
Yep, so we've got these 3 pillars. The CEU leadership program, pillar 1 is good decisions, which is the first pillar, which looks at kind of choice architecture. We have some of the leading faculty in Europe looking at things like how do individuals make better choices, sort of building on sort of the work of Kahneman and so on in sort of behavioral economics. The second pillar is what we call good cultures, which our current participants will be doing in August in Budapest, which is looking at kind of how leadership takes place in an organizational context. And then the third pillar, and for our current participants, it's not too far away, folks. It's almost there, the final summer module. It's what we call good life, where we focus not just on sort of, professional success, but balancing professional success with other important forces and influences on your life.
Thank you very much. We have a question about the different backgrounds. If legal professionals are also represented in the cohort currently. I think Lydia also already emphasized on this. I mean, she is a legal expert, so the question has been answered already, luckily. What is included in the 25,000 euro tuition?
The tuition.
Yeah.
So the tuition is the tuition, which is 25,000 euros, and that includes all courses, right, course materials, networking events organized by the program, and so on. All other costs, travel, accommodation, are in addition to the tuition.
What is the 360-degree peer review, and what does it mean, and how does it work?
I'm looking at our 2 current participants to see if I can see facial expressions. Lydia's smiling. That's good. Oh, and Georgiu's smiling now as well. So the 360-degree peer review principle is that in a class of about 60 people, even the most talented instructors like Achilles can't keep an eye on everybody and paying attention. He gave that beautiful, the law of forgetting, right? I mean, it's just, when he was speaking about it, it was like, oh my God, that's so true, right? So what we do is we believe that a professional program with highly experienced executives should have the opportunity to actually evaluate each other. And so the peer review process is quite a complex, I must say, and I want to thank, on behalf of your class, I want to thank the 2 of you who are with us this evening for your patience with this peer review process. But we fundamentally believe it's a much more effective way of gauging participation in the program. And I think it reduces the subjectivity of understanding class participation, because at least it gives us more subjective views than just a single one of the professor. That's certainly my view.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. What are our efforts to ensure diversity in class?
Well, yep. We try in a number of ways, explicitly by encouraging applications from people across different sectors. So the corporate sector, the entrepreneurial sector, the purpose, mission-driven sector, and the public sector. And plus, as I mentioned during the program presentation, we have a series of merit-based fellowships and need-based fellowships, because we recognize that often folks working in the not-for-profit sector, salaries are not particularly high, unfortunately, and affordability questions come to the fore. And also in some countries, unfortunately, public sector employees are not rewarded at levels commensurate with their contributions and capabilities. So we have both an explicit targeting of participants, which Thomas, very well because you're leading that effort, and we have, thanks to the support we have from our founder of the university, we have very generous scholarship opportunities.
Mm-hmm. The 2 remaining questions are, can you tell us about the application process? How does it work? What's needed?
Yeah, thanks. So, it's a formal process. So you fill out an application form. I want to focus on three things, which I think are very important in your application materials. A cover letter, which doesn't just address a generic statement about why you want to do an MBA, but basically convinces the admissions committee that you have a particular interest in CEU's Executive MBA. In the same way that we want to be distinctive from our competition, we want our applicants to distinguish themselves from their competition in terms of their reason to join us. A CV which is to the point and well organized. I get to see a lot of applicants' CVs, and it's the ones that are well organized. I mean, this is very obvious, but worth mentioning. Those are the ones that stand out. And letters of reference which go beyond standard statements about being a hard worker, being being a team player. Letters of reference that kind of tell us you are a person that can really bring added value to our program. Once you submit the application, once it's complete, if you meet the entrance criteria, and again, Thomas, will help walk you through those when you speak with him in the one-on-ones, or you contact him by email and so forth, you'll be called for an interview. The interview lasts approximately 45 minutes to 1 hour, depending on how the conversation goes. A recommendation is given by the interviewer, who's typically a faculty member, which goes to the admissions committee, which is a group of faculty. And then they make final recommendations to the rector and president of the university, which is currently Michael Ignatieff, but from September will be a new president, who makes the final decision on admission to the program.
Mm-hmm. And the last question deals with financials. Can you tell us more about available scholarships?
Yeah.
Shall I answer that question?
Well, I mean, I think I've already said it a couple of times, but I'm happy to say it for a third time. So we have these two categories of scholarships, what we call merit-based scholarships, where we assess the candidate's merit of joining the program, right? What they bring to the program, educational attainment, quality of cover letter, performance at interview, and so forth, right? Making a contribution to open society, I think, is a very important feature of that. And then within the merit-based scholarships, we have a series of much more targeted scholarships which focus on particular areas and particular countries. So, for example, we have a scholarship in France for a minority executive, right? Because as we know in France, I don't want to enter into a debate here, but in France, there are issues of social mobility in minority communities in France. We have an LGBTQ fellowship for folks from Poland. So there's a significant range of merit-based scholarships. But if you don't qualify for those, there's also what we call need-based scholarships, which are based largely on your proof of income. And if your income falls below a certain threshold, we can offer a substantial fellowship to defray the costs of the tuition.
I just shared the link to book a one-on-one consultation with me in the chat box. I think the question about scholarships can be better handled in a one-on-one consultation, because we can discuss individual eligibility, etc. So please book your one-on-one consultation with me. That was the last question. It's 7:30. It's the perfect timing. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us tonight. Thank you very much, Lydia. Thank you very much, Georgiu. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much, Achilles, for making this happen. And thank you, attendees, for coming tonight. Thank you very much. Have a nice